How's it going, Phyllis?
Good. How about you?
Good. Good. I did a mailer kind of geared towards people who were unhappy with the election.
Oh my, that's interesting.
And I have gotten so many hits off it that it's like crazy.
That is such a good idea. Wow. That's
so I've been
cool.
No makeup. I woke up to a call at like 7:30 this morning from one.
Well, you've been like killing it. So that's
a good sign that it was a good mailer that an agent was telling me off.
That is so interesting. That was really good thinking. Like you really thought ahead on that.
Thank you.
That's cool. Yeah.
I've got to make the volume here. Okay.
So is there anything we can pull up today for this or no? Just make note. Like there's nothing like not
the KW command and look at the buyer consult, but not really. We're going to talk about it from, just a purely concept end, because every buyer consult should really be different. I don't subscribe to the cookie cutter KW model that works in a lot of places in our, in our country.
Yeah.
I feel like our market's really sophisticated. And so when I do a buyer CMA, it's always different based on what I know and where they're looking, and honestly, how formal the meeting is, because a lot of buyer consults are literally on the phone and I'm not using.
Right. That's true.
So I will teach more on a formal concept today, because if you understand the formal, you'll understand how to do the informal. But I use those buyer consults in KW Command as like a guide. So I highly recommend going through all of them. It's like 30 pages long, like any.
I saw it's like where the listing templates are, right? Like the, I saw those.
So a lot of it's garbage. A lot of it's the same info. And a lot of it's actually setting yourself up as an agent for failure. Because when you're asking your buyer what kind of countertops even that they want in a home where they can barely afford to buy anything, you're just mismanaging expectations from the get-go. Let me get my barking dog.
No.
Come here, little barking dog. Come here. Say hi to everybody. Hi.
Oh, wait, is that a yes, Palm. Yeah, cute.
All right, so back to talking about setting yourself up, like where you should look. So I do recommend that you look at that, because obviously there's going to be some stuff in there that could be important depending upon the buyer you're talking to. And in all honesty, I've probably only done one formal buyer consult where I had to bring a package in the last 10 years. Most of them, most of my business is referral. So I get warm leads, right? People who are, they've already heard great things about me. There's already built-in trust. So, but I have done one. And it was a little nerve-wracking because it had been so long since I sat down and did one. But I actually really liked it by the time I was out of there. So like I brought this computer, which is also a tablet, and what they wanted didn't exist. And one of the biggest things beyond managing a buyer's expectations is guiding them without telling them no. I don't want to be the no person. I don't want to be the negative person, but a lot of times I know straight off what they're looking for. It doesn't exist in their price range. So what I like to do is actually pull up on the MLS what is in that price range in that area. A lot of times it's nothing. And I can show them that instead of being the one that tells them that, right? It's always better to show than tell. So, yeah, I will show you guys a sample of my buyer consult package at the end of class, but conceptually, let's talk about what would go into a buyer consult package. So first and foremost is going to be some information about you. So if you guys don't have a headshot, you guys definitely need a professional headshot. You can talk to Justin Carter in our office. He'll set you up with someone from, I think, the Hollywood Hills office that does it. Our forward living department will do headshots. And just a little piece of advice. Headshots, you might want to get a clear background. They transfer onto everything better. Everything. So you can have a freestanding headshot, or you can have a blocked out one like that. But one of the big mistakes I see agents make that get headshots is they get one with a background. That's fine for some things, but on a lot of your marketing pieces, a lot of your presentation materials, it's not going to work, or it's going to clash. So also have whoever takes your headshot and give you one with the background basically clear, so that it can transfer onto anything.
Could you repeat her name, please?
I'm sorry?
Could you repeat her name, please? The person for headshots?
Oh, so contact our marketing guy in our office, Justin Carter. He will set you up with Forward Living, which I believe runs out of the Hollywood Hills office.
Yeah, I'll
They
put
do
his
headshots.
I'll put his email and phone number in the chat for anybody who needs it.
Thank you.
And if
Awesome.
you need
Thanks,
your
guys.
makeup done, ladies, let me know. For your
Yeah,
event. I'll hook you up.
Alfredo does great makeup.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
I'll
It's
let
all
them
over
know.
at Facebook and
I love
Instagram.
that.
So a headshot is definitely a must. Bio also. And it is really hard to write about yourself. I have an English degree with an emphasis in creative writing. I didn't write my own bio. It is really weird to talk like that about yourself. And most bios should be written in third person. Again, it's really unnatural to write about yourself in third person. You know, here I am tooting my horn in third person is very uncomfortable. So, you know, even if you wanted to take a stab at writing your own, I think you're going to find what I'm telling you to be true right off. So there are a lot of companies out there that write professional bios. They're not all geared towards real estate. So even if it's great, you want to have a seasoned real estate agent take a look at it. The one that I had written for me, I believe it was more geared towards sellers. Well, guess what? I actually happen to end up working with more buyers than I do sellers. So that bio doesn't work, you know, for everyone. And I need a bio because it goes on everything that works for everyone. Also, some other pitfalls to be aware of. BMO in bios are using timeframes. So I have a lot of experience, just a long time in the business. And because of that, I thought it was really important to include those years of experience. And I did. Finally, I'm 20 years in and I got to change that number to the word decades, which saves me from every year going in on every platform and changing my bio and keeping it up to date. So it now says decades. So I just want you to be aware, if the numbers are important and impressive, great. But keep in mind that you're going to have to like calendar it out and change that annually. All right, so what you're going to see in the KW Command Buyer Consult package is a lot of stuff about Keller Williams, right? Particularly for a buyer, I don't think the brokerage is that important, right? They're buying the service, they're buying the skill, they're buying the negotiation tools, they're buying the care and concern. So, you know, you can include some KW materials in your buyer consult package if you're creating a formal one, but I don't think you should do more than a page if you're going to do it at all, right? I tell people all the time, you know, you'll have other agents that go in there too, and they'll slam our brokerage. Our brokerage takes new agents, unlike most of Beverly Hills. Is that a bad thing? I don't think so. We're just different, right? And that's why we have this really incredible training program that we have, is we're geared toward expansion and new agents. So, you know, when I go into buyer consults, if I know the buyer is meeting with anyone else, I don't say anything negative about any other agent or brokerage. If I know who they are, I have nothing nice to say, I'll say nothing. If I have something nice to say, I'll actually say it, right? No need to come from a place of scarcity or fear. You know, by doing that, you're not projecting confidence, you're projecting the opposite, insecurity. So keep it positive. I stay off the brokerage topic because I'm there for them to know me and for me to know them. And from there, it really is about them, right? So I want them to know who I am at a minimum, where I come from, what my qualifications are. But after that, it's all about them. So practice buyer consult, because the whole point is to make it like a natural conversation. If they like you, if they feel comfortable with you, they're probably your buyers. But if you're not comfortable with the material and the questions you need to ask them to really prepare them and get a search set up for them, you're not going to have that personal connection. You're going to be referring to the materials you had brought with you too often to make enough eye contact and joke and ask them those opportunity questions when, you know, Mrs. Buyer says, oh, I'm a teacher, you know, oh, what school, what grade, you know, right? It's about them. So if you're doing buyer consult, you're gonna have your buyer consult package, you're gonna have your computer, like I said, because it's gonna be advantageous to you if their expectations are unrealistic from the get-go, to be able to show them versus telling them. Let's talk about some other things that go into buyer consult. So what are some other things that might go in if you have references or referrals? And I always make it a note on my referral sheet if I have one. And I know as new agents, you guys might not have that. You can leverage referrals and references from your mentor if you have one. Just make sure your mentor is actually included in that meeting and part of that package. That way, when your potential clients call these referrals or references, they're not like, who? Right? There's nothing worse that could happen than, who are you talking about? What else? I try to make sure I meet the buyer at a place that's comfortable for them, at a time that's comfortable for them. Especially first-time buyers are usually the ones you're doing more formal, like in-person consults with, because, you know, they've read, and so they get a more, they have a different idea of it than maybe another type of buyer. You're gonna be meeting with them after hours most of the time in their home, or I oftentimes will use other Keller Williams offices to meet with clients closer to where they live. So there should always be a checklist, even if you're not doing a in-person meeting with the buyer. So that's going to be a part of your package. And it's also going to be your greatest asset so that you don't forget anything. That checklist is not just going to be about the property. It's going to be a lot about the buyer's needs, because I can tell you this, almost every buyer I meet with that tells me what they want, they buy something different in a different neighborhood than they initially told me. Oftentimes what I suggested to them gently initially, but they refused to hear until they sort of saw what the market was like. So that checklist initially is going to be, so, you know, I want to know the motivation of why the buyer is looking to move or purchase. Do they need to sell something else? Is there a time frame? Once I know the motivation, oh, we want to be closer to our kids' school. We want to move into a better school district. We want to be closer to our work. We want a quieter, you know, way of life. You know, that's going to give me huge indicators based on my market knowledge of what I think would work for them, right? Let's see, what else? Obviously, square footage, although not everyone is a spatial person. So even if a buyer tells me I need a minimum of 1,500 square feet, I'm still probably looking 1,300 and up. And I'm making these notes as I'm, you know, having a conversation with them. So the better prepared I am to work them into natural conversation, the better practiced I am, the better this conversation is going to go. So if your client is looking for single family, do they need a yard? How about a pool? What else? Parking, garage, access, 1-story, 2-story. So I oftentimes get the request for a single-story home. And it's important for you guys to know this, and I think it'll help your knowledge shine a little bit. And this is what we're trying to do, right? Is we're trying to unconsciously, or, you know, a little discreetly sway them by displaying our higher level knowledge. Is that the information that the MLS has and that I can search by, the criteria, is only as good as the listing agent who entered it. So particularly something like, you wouldn't think a single-story home would be subjective, but they don't get it right all of the time. So I pose that option to the buyer. I'd rather not put that criteria in, because unfortunately the listing agents that, you know, enter this information, they get it wrong a lot of times. And so we might not see property that would work for you. And we may still see property that doesn't work for you. So if you don't mind, I'll keep that out of it. You'll end up looking at a few more properties, right? But I'll be going through these daily myself, and I'll point out anything that I think might be a good fit for you. So another thing that's very subjective is view. So again, I don't necessarily recommend using these subjective criteria on the MLS. And I do recommend having the open conversation of how that is subjective, like I said, only as good as the listing agent who enters it. So, you know, you're going to, buyers who want something particular like that, you're really going to have to every single day, you know, however you have your MLS search set up, whether it's once every morning as they come, you're really going to have to be on top of reviewing those listings and making comments, doing the research. And you want to work that process into your buyer consult a little bit, right? So you want to say something like, I'll be looking at these every day. They're not all going to work for you, but I will look at them, and anything that's great, I'll send to you. What else would be on a checklist? So let's say they're looking for a condominium. You probably want to find out about the parking. Is it tandem? Is it side by side? Is there storage? And guys, these questions are all in the KW command buyer consult. Like I said, go through it. Only take what you need. Don't take anything you don't. Make your own list, and really practice that list into natural conversation. Okay, so parking, storage, amenities in the building, the cost of the HOA dues. Tricky because your buyer may have a comfort level, but a lender might not, which we'll talk about pre-qualification in a second. That's like one of your most important conversations in a buyer consult is pre-qualification. I guess that lends into price. Again, you're asking them the price, but until they talk to a lender and get pre-qualified, what your buyer is comfortable with may be far different from what a bank is willing to loan in either direction. Let's see, pet restrictions in a condo, rental restrictions. Sometimes a condo will only allow a certain number of units to be rented at any one given time, or after they've owned it for a certain period of time. So those are all things to think about. Laundry in unit or in the building or not at all. Let's see what else. Obviously, you're going to run into some strange situations sometimes, VA or FHA loans. We're not going to talk about that today. I've just been seeing a lot more VA loans recently, so I should probably do a class on that soon. Let's talk about what else would be important. You know, bedroom, bathroom, square footage, style might be important, whether a buyer is willing to do some work or if they want something completely done, move in. Perfect, right? Also, you know, not part of the buyer consult, but something to keep in mind is when you get these listings that meet their criteria, not only are you going to look at thoroughly look at the full agent detail on the MLS, I want you to pull it up on Google Maps, right? And you can even work this into your buyer consult if you have your computer with you, especially if you're already pulling up a search because the parameters the buyer are giving you are ridiculous. And show them, you know, you pull up Google Maps, you look at the street view, you look at what's next door. So if I find a perfect home and I'm sending it to the buyer, you know, this house is perfect, but there's a large condo complex next door and there's a school at the end of the block, right? These are things that most agents might miss, but you are basically pre-qualifying the property for your buyer right away. And like I said, these parameters and what your buyer is willing to accept are probably going to change over time as they find that in LA, you know, if you're buying under 5 million, you're probably just buying what you have to, right? It's not sexy. I guess it could be if you're buying a condo, but generally under 5 million, it's not going to be perfect. It's just not. My buyers in the $2 million price range, they're like, what is this? How am I buying a home I barely like for $2 million? That's just the way it is here, right? So what else for buyer consult? Here, I'm actually going to pull mine up.
Before you do this, do you
Mhm.
want to have them pre-qualified? You do, right?
No, generally I take the opportunity to try to steer the buyer to my preferred lender. I have an amazing lender that I've worked with forever, and I know that I don't have to worry about anything if I work with him. So I do have that discussion. So are you pre-qualified? Have you talked to anyone? They may say, I have someone, particularly if it's a bank direct, you're not going to get the best service. And I have the conversation with the buyers that banks can only shop a few types of loans, whereas a mortgage broker can shop thousands. So I tell them, even if they think they want to work with their bank, I think that they should just have a conversation with a mortgage broker, whether it's mine or not, but that I do highly recommend him. And, you know, I have the added bonus of really knowing my lender, having a lot of my buyers, having worked with him, having gotten a loan myself with him, my grandparents doing their loan with him. So, right, like telling them that my grandparents did their purchase with him, that really helps with the credibility and getting them to actually reach out to him. But if nothing else, they should talk to a mortgage broker, whether it's yours or not, because they just have access to so many more. All right, I'm going to do this screen share. You guys see that?
Yes.
All right, so it starts off like I have a cover page, a hard cover, but it really doesn't matter, with the bio, the about me, my contact info. Okay, a table of contents, just a filler, and a positive message. And this message here, you know, it's not that important, but you know, if I am bringing something printed, I'm leaving something written with them. So, you know, basically this says that I'm going to work hard for them, and it's exciting, but it's serious, and you know, I'm going to use everything I have to achieve their goals. Right. So there's just that positive reinforcement, even with the filler page. The shopping for your home. This is kind of that checklist, right? When would you like to be in your home? The price range that I feel most comfortable with is bedroom, bathroom, square footage, interested in what areas. I often take this time to suggest areas to them, or I might do it at the end of the consult when we've talked a little bit more and I know more about what they like or what they want. Because if they're asking me for a single family home in, you know, Beverly Hills Flats for $2 million, it's not going to happen, right? But I can maybe suggest Brentwood to them, or BHPO, maybe Culver City, depending on what their want is. Why do they want Beverly Hills? I'm thinking probably good schools, nice neighborhood, great, you know, city services. And so my recommendations would probably be from that point. Brentwood, maybe if they're going to stretch even further, Pacific Palisades, although I don't know if that price range is going to work there. Yeah, so, you know, the areas, I let them tell me what they want initially, and I gently suggest anything if I suggest anything in that initial meeting towards the end. And usually with the help of the MLS showing me or showing them directly that what they want is not available. I don't really like question number 5 on a scale of 1 to 10. How immediate is the need to purchase? And a lot of buyers, they don't really want you to know that anyways. The buyers who are like, we're in no rush to buy, or honestly, a lot of times my most eager buyers. But I think, you know, they don't know you, they don't trust you, they don't want to be sold, they want their needs met. So I don't particularly like this question, but I think there is a purpose to it, right? So I generally try to work it in, you know, like based on what's the motivation for moving? What does that mean? Oh, you want to move because your kid's school. So we need to get you in before the beginning of the school year. Let me find out when that happens. So we have a target date in mind. I have met with a lender to pre-qualify for a loan, yes or no. That's when you can have your, you know, discussion about working with a mortgage broker, or at least talking to one. Also, this information gets me, I think, in the door quite a bit with condo buyers is, you know, they will tell me they have not worked with the lender. They're thinking about a condo. Here's their price range. And I can stop and tell them, I really think that after this meeting, your first call should be to a mortgage broker. The reason for that is because lenders, they factor in HOA dues in this really weird exponential way. You know, I don't have any more explanation for it than that. So even if you could honestly afford, you know, a $1 million single family, the bank might only qualify you for an $850 purchase on a condo. Okay, so now you know that as an agent, you can work that into your discussions with your potential condo buyers, and it also gives you gets you one step closer to having an actually qualified buyer ready to go, right? Pre-qualified with factual information, so you're not wasting your time doing showings on something that you can't buy in a million years, not $1 million. Let's see. I would like to know how much I qualify for to spend on a home. That goes back to the, pre-qualification. I have to sell a home before I can purchase my next home. Or in the case of a first-time buyer, are they renting? Like, what's their lease situation like? I have actually worked with a buyer who we found a home that they loved. Turns out they had 6 months left on their lease. And they'd have to break a lease in order to purchase. And we ended up doing it. We found a replacement tenant for them, but it put a lot of pressure on me, a lot of pressure. And I don't know if I would have I would have probably delayed their search instead of putting them into escrow and then scrambling around trying to find a replacement tenant for them, which I didn't get paid for, right? Which is not really my job, but I needed to do. And that was because I didn't preemptively have that conversation about what their current living situation is like. All right. The best days, times for me to view homes this is important, right? Whoops. Let's see. Here we go. The top 5 must-haves for the home you buy. I don't state it that way. I ask them what's important to you in a home. Like, what do you have to have? Unless I'm working with a buyer who's clearly in a higher price range, I'm not addressing the next question at all. The top 5 nice to have features for the home. So a higher price range, yes. Sometimes, they'll say something like, it'd be nice to have a pool, but it's not necessary. That would fall into this category. And then 12, basically deal breakers. Again, I'm not using this figure of 5, but what would you consider features you don't want to have in the home that you buy? And I would say, do you have any deal breakers, right? So like, I don't want to be next to a freeway. I don't want to be next to multifamily. I don't want to be next to a school. I don't want to be close to retail. I don't want to be someplace noisy. I don't want to be someplace where it's tough to park. Contact info. All right, this is a mistake I make all the time, particularly when my buyer consult is going very well. I talk about all this. I tell them I'm going to set up an MLS search for them. I have their name, I have their phone number, but guess what I forgot? Their email. And if you're working with more than one buyer, very important, you need everyone's contact info, because obviously they're going to be making the decision together. And if you're not including both parties on the same correspondence or sending them the same properties, you might be, wasting your time. You might be setting up showings or doing things, where one buyer is in and one buyer is like, I hate this house. And you will get that oftentimes. Can anyone tell me generally, like in a traditional husband-wife marriage, who the decision maker generally is?
The wife.
Wife.
That's right. Go
Yep.
ladies. Happy wife, happy life, right?
Yep.
So generally speaking, you'll figure it out once you start corresponding with these buyers who's more in charge. And it may not always be the person that's conversing with you the most, right? It may be the husband has, is self-employed, he's much more flexible, he can talk to you, but you have to keep in mind, you have to pull information out of the wife, like, oh, well, what do you think, Mrs. Buyer, right? So just keep that in mind when you're corresponding. And I don't know if this is right, but it's done well for me. I tend to, when I'm working with a married couple, unless the husband continuously is the one responding to me, I tend to make the woman like my first point of contact. Why? I just try to honor their marriage. I know that the woman is a decision maker most of the time. That's not always the case, but statistically speaking, that is the case. I hope I don't actually have to bring this up, but I'm going to bring it up because it's been an issue in the past. Not at our office. I ran mentorship before I was at the office in a different one. Ladies, particularly. Please don't dress like you're going to the club when you're meeting with Mr. and Mrs. Buyer or seller. All right. You're there to be a professional person. You should be dressed professionally. They're entering, this journey that, may be one of the most important financial decisions ever in their life. Treat it like that. Okay. I have clients that I show up with t-shirts and flip-flops with. Absolutely. But you know what? Those are clients I've been working with, and they're like, please don't ever show up like in a full-blown, blazer, suit, heels, like it's not necessary. But treat it like it's work. Treat it professionally. Same thing, men, like, how hard is it not to wear a pair of tennis shoes? Wear a pair of dress shoes. That's really all men have to do to get away with pretty much anything. You wear a dress shirt with jeans if you're a man almost. But until you gauge your clients, just treat it as if it's like a job interview. All right. See. So I do put a buying a home process in here, and you'll find it in the KW Command buyer consult as well. They'll have the buying a home process. I don't particularly like this. I think I don't include it. But a lot of times remember, buyer consult is different for everyone. So I might be doing first time buyer consult class, or, a first time buyer workshop with referrals from my clients, preparing them for later. So when I'm doing much more preparation work, I think this works out nicely for me the year out. But ideally, what do I want? I want an active buyer now. So just keep that in mind as you go through the KW Command package and you create your own. Unless you know you're going for someone who's far out, why put that idea into their mind? This could be a year-long process. Instead, you want to make this a quick, professional, good process for them and get them into a home. That's what you do. You want to make a commission. You want to close a deal. I don't put those longer timeframes in there unless I know I'm already working with that. Okay, home buying process. You're going to also find a version of this in the KW Command package. I can't tell you how many problems I have with this, with particularly the escrow part of the home buying process ever being diagrammed out. It makes it look so simple, and it's truly not. And there are a lot of layered factors in here. There are even some issues with its accuracy. I think I changed some of this when I did it, because selling real estate, the process is different region to region, let alone northern, Northern and Southern California are very different processes, particularly when it comes to escrow and title. But I do want to have some sort of visual here. And, I could make this better. And I have a home buying process, like first time home buyers process A to Z, completely written out. You may not be at a point in your career where you can do that yet, but you can definitely talk to another agent and sort of, elaborate on these before you have your appointment. But, we'll go through them quickly. So select a real estate agent, obtain financial pre-approval, analyze your needs in a buyer consultation. Well, that kind of goes hand in hand with the select a real estate agent, right? Select properties, view properties, write an offer to purchase. Well, there's a whole lot of steps missing here, right? So I'm going to pull the CMA from my buyers, advise them on what the proper, value is of the home. I'm going to, we're not supposed to do these love letters anymore. I'm still doing them. I have always had my buyers take out information that could be potentially received poorly or inappropriately by the other party. So getting that letter ready. Also, a big thing that's missing here, obtain financial approval down to write an offer to purchase. Proof of funds. Proof of funds is not in here at all. So I always make sure that I bring up proof of funds in a buyer consult class, because some buyers are like, wait, what? I don't want to show anyone my bank account statement. First off, that's a bad sign for you as agents. Americans culturally are fine to show their money if they have it. Higher context culture may be a little more veiled about their finances. So that's why it'd be important, particularly during your initial buyer consult, to make sure that that's going to accompany an offer. So you can sort of drop that in and make sure they're aware. Write an offer to purchase, negotiate terms. Well, the terms have actually been negotiated in the offer. What they mean by this is inspections and inspection negotiation if there's any necessary repairs or credits. Okay. All the while their lender is doing underwriting during this. So accept the contract, you know, which you would basically open escrow. And escrow is not really referred to on here. So escrow for me has many meanings. Escrow is a time frame. It's from the time you have an accepted contract to the time you close it. It is the entity that acts basically as the wedding coordinator for the whole deal. And I always make sure that I emphasize to a buyer and or a seller that escrow is a really, really important part of any process that we have. So anything that they want or need should be tended to right away. Like I said, they're kind of the coordinator for the whole deal. So if they don't have what they need, chances are title doesn't have what they need. Your lender doesn't have what they need. So this whole process would be, you know, escrow. And, oh, sorry, the third meaning of escrow is the actual holding of the money. So particularly people from other states who have purchased or sold are going to have a very misinformed concept of what a transaction looks like and what escrow is. So again, I do think this is worth talking about, but I've never seen a good example of, you know, a diagram written out for the purchase process. So removal of contingencies would generally happen after all of the disclosures, reports, inspections are done. Part of that, like I said, is conducting inspections, resolving any issues. The title company, once you open escrow, is going to open a preliminary title report. They're not going to remove any encumbrances. They're going to do that prior to close of escrow. They're not doing that during the course of escrow, but they may be obtaining information so that they can do so. And that's not really an issue for a buyer. That's on the seller side. Obtain title insurance, that's issued on the day of closing. Okay, obtain mortgage financing. So that's going to take place during the entire transaction from the time you have acceptance on. What they're going to do is they're going to submit all of the contracts and escrow instructions and fees to their underwriting department. They're going to order an appraisal of the home. And, you know, about 2 to 3 weeks into the transaction, that appraisal report is going to come back. It's going to go to a special underwriting review department. Once you have the okay on that, you can lift the appraisal contingency. Only after the appraisal is received and a second round of underwriting has taken place can actual formal loan approval take place. So new agents, particularly when you're working with lenders you don't know, there is a big difference between conditional loan approval and formal loan approval. And a lot of lenders, especially if they're running late or behind, like to send out their conditional approvals. Don't ever mistake that for formal loan approval. And don't let your clients ever mistake that for a formal loan approval. You cannot safely lift a loan contingency until the lender or mortgage broker says, you know, in writing that it's safe for the buyer to lift their loan contingency. All right, so obtain funds for closing. Oh, another big step is once a contract's accepted, the buyer would have to send in their initial money deposit, their earnest money deposit, which is typically what, guys? What's the dollar amount on that? That's a trick question.
2 to 3%.
3%.
3%, yes. So that's missing here. And that would be something of a lot of interest to a buyer, right?
Excuse me, but you know, I knew like sometimes you can put more money if you like want to show the seller that you're very serious. It can be more than 3%, right?
Oh yeah, your buyer can do more or less, whatever they want. Anything less looks weak. Anything more puts more of the buyer's money at risk, though. But only
Okay.
after they've lifted all their all of their contingencies, and if they failed to close.
Mm-hmm.
There's also something called an increased deposit, but I talk about that at length in my purchase contract class. Oops. Okay. Obtain funds for closing. That's two things. The loan is going to fund, the lender is going to fund it, and the buyer is going to wire in the last of their closing funds, the balance of their down payment. So if they're doing an 80-20, meaning they're receiving 80% of the purchase price and loan, and they are putting down 20, they wire in at the beginning of their escrow, their 3% deposit. And at the end, their remaining 17 deposit plus closing costs. So that's another thing missing from the home buying process. And it's a very common question with buyers. What are the closing costs? And you don't have a definite answer to that, but the answer is, well, that's relative to the purchase price. It's generally between 1.5% to 2% for buyers with a loan. For a buyer without a loan, it's generally 1 to 1.5%. Okay. Close on the property. Closing on the property is called recording, and funding takes place 1 day before recording. Take possession of the home, you know, basically the day it records, it's theirs. All right, home buying process broken down. This kind of goes over a little bit of what was on the previous page. I know that there's an even bigger one in the KW Command Buyer Consult class. I think it's worth reading through. We've already sort of talked about it. So I'm not going to go over this, but I do think it's advantageous for you guys to really understand the home buying process. And I also think it's advantageous for you to sort of break it down in a visual way, particularly when working with first-time buyers, but not to get too hung up on, like I told you, I wrote out literally because I had a really difficult buyer that was like, I want to know every single thing that happens in escrow before I'll make an offer. So it took me 2.5 days, but I wrote out anything and everything, and it's like 10 pages long because I have to explain everything to that buyer, right? They're not a savvy buyer, so I have to explain all the terminology and why this could happen or that could happen. I don't think that's advantageous. You don't want to scare a buyer. This is already a scary process. It can be overwhelming, but I do think it would be advantageous to break down like the main points. But also to say, you know, use keywords like in most cases, most of the time, usually. Who does what? Again, I don't know if I love this, but it is pretty important for particularly an inexperienced buyer to understand who does what in the transaction. So that would be their agent, the buyer's agent, what the listing agent's going to do, you know, to bring up things like, particularly people coming from another state, buyers and sellers don't directly interact here. That, you know, the buyer doesn't typically interact with the listing agent whatsoever. They would always, you know, always go through their agent. What the mortgage broker or lender does, what they're going to ask for. I don't know why multiple listing services on here. But, you know, we often refer to the MLS, and maybe the buyer has no idea what that is. Who the escrow officer is, what they do, who the title officer is, what they do, who the appraiser is, what they do. One thing that I think is really missing from this example, and like I said, I do a different buyer consult in every case. And I think I threw this together in about 20 minutes because I hadn't done a formal buyer consult in like 5 years. The inspectors. Inspectors are really, really key people for your buyers, right? So I think inspectors should be included in that. What I think is most important is references from past clients. If you're ever going to have a reference in here, whether it's yours or your mentors, I think it's extremely important to let your potential clients know that you've obtained permission from each of your referrals to provide their telephone numbers, and they won't be surprised by their call. You know what else is great about that? I have a great excuse to contact my past client and obviously infer that I'm an active agent still, right? And catch up with them, but also to ask them for the referral. So I'm constantly reinforcing my relationship with them. So not only is this a powerful tool with a potential client, but it's a powerful contact tool. And it's an excuse to reach out to your past clients and have a nice conversation with them that's light.
Would it be weird if you like put the review in here, or is it better to do this format? Like,
if you have a review, I think that's totally fine. And I have great reviews. but they're awfully wordy. And because I'm trying
Yeah.
to keep the buyer consult simple, but if you're actually leaving
Okay.
a physical package with them, they may like look at it when they're like watching TV on the couch together at night, or, you know, before they go to bed. It can't hurt to have it in there. I think it's a great tool. It's just probably not something I'm going to review in an in-person meeting because it's so wordy. You know, even with my references, I just say, hey, I got permission from all of these past clients on here to give out their contact info to you. Please feel free. I encourage you. You know, you don't need to take my word for it. I'd like you to speak to people who've directly had a personal experience buying or selling with me. And, you know, I've been in the business a long time, so I get to kind of pick and choose who goes in here. And so if I know anything about the potential clients I'm meeting, I try to sort of match make my references to them, be that price point, be that like culturally. I was meeting in this instance with some very eclectic people. And so I thought, oh, I'm going to make sure that I have a massive range of ethnicities and price ranges and personality types in here, right? So you can look at the names: Gregory, King, Ciordacci, Libertini, Kaplan, Wee, Cohen, right? This is a big like melting pot mix. I wanted these people to know that, like, you know, I'm not just this waspy little blonde girl from Manhattan Beach that's, you know, silver spoon and doesn't care about them. I want them to see that I work with a diversity of people, that I provide great service to tons of different kind of people, regardless of what price range they're in, what they look like, where they come from, right? That doesn't enter my head at all. And I thought I could, you know, like indirectly relay that by having this big mix of names and, you know, just different types of clients I've worked with. All right, so back to buyer consult. Let's talk a little bit more about setting up the MLS search. Like I said, I sort of like to do it if I can in front of them with them right there, and kind of send them things. What I really love to do, and another reason I highly encourage the computer and pulling this up in front of them, if you can do it and feel comfortable while you're talking, right? You don't want to kill the interaction in the meeting, is if we see something we like, I ask them if they want to go see it and what day and time would be great. And the second I step out of that meeting, my very first phone call is to the listing agent of that property. Why? The second that buyer starts seeing property with me, the closer they are to being my client, period. All right, so first-time buyers are a special breed, like I said. A lot of them are going to do a lot of research before they meet you, and they might have some unusual questions, and you should be aware of this anyhow. You may want to use this. I never use it, but there's something called a BRE. It's a buyer's exclusive representation agreement. It basically contractually binds a buyer to working with a buyer's agent for a time frame. And guess what? I think it's really tacky. I hate it. But I do get first-time buyers a lot of times that ask me about it, or other agents they've met with have asked for one. My response to that is, I don't want to contractually bind you to working with me. I'm confident that you're going to be happy with my services. And if you're not, I want you to find someone you're happy with. I have no incentive to contractually bind you to anything. I am really, really confident in the fact that I'm going to find you a home that makes you happy, and I'm going to provide you great service. Now, on the flip side, if you do want to use a BRE, you can. Regionally, place to place, it's different. It's much more common in lower end markets. And people do ask me, is there any instance in which I would use a BRE? If I didn't trust the buyer, I would probably use a BRE. Okay. But if I don't trust the buyer, I probably had past interaction with them and I know something about them, so I'm probably not doing a buyer consult anyways. I may happen to have met them at one of my listings, an open house or something. And so, you know, they want to write with a listing agent. Well, if they want to continuously write with a listing agent, I don't want to go do work for them, finding them off markets and coming soons. I don't want to go do all this hard work for them if all they're going to do is take my information and go right to the listing agent. So if I was going to do that and I didn't trust the buyer, I would consider using a BRE. But myself personally, otherwise, I would never use one. I'm not going to force anyone to work with me. I'm happy to earn their business. Anybody else have any ideas, questions, concerns related to buyer consult they think are worth discussing or they'd like to ask?
Is this the last page or no?
Yeah, I keep my
Oh.
buyer consults really short and
Okay.
sweet. Yeah.
Okay.
Really short and sweet because I'm much more concerned with our interaction than I am this. All I need from this is enough information to set up a reasonably good MLS search. So I guess worth mentioning again, I also told you that, you know, one of the questions you're going to ask them is ideally what areas would they be interested in? You may have a pretty good idea of what might work better for them. And before you finish up this meeting, you might want to say, you know what, I think Culver City might be a good fit for you too. How would you feel about me throwing it into the MLS search? We can always, you know, modify the MLS search to where you're getting fewer results, but I think you might find something you like. It's worth taking a look at. And they generally are, you know, because I'm posing it that way, they generally are open to that. And like I said, more often than not, buyers end up buying where I thought they would versus what they said they would. Also, I think it's worth having a conversation. I wouldn't bring this up in the buyer consult, but particularly first-time home buyers, they're going to go on Redfin and Zillow now. This is, you know, common for the last 10 years or so. They're going to pull up all these weird properties that don't actually work, these great deals, right? We know great deals don't really exist. If they do, bring them to me, I will buy them. So just something to have in your mind. Hopefully this buyer consult goes well. You get this buyer, they're going to start sending you weird things. I don't just tell them they're weird things. I actually do all the research, right? I'll look it up. I'll call the first sale by owner. I will pull, you know, a comp, or, you know, I'll explain whatever's wrong with the property to the buyer. Then guess what? After about a couple of weeks, they stop sending me weird stuff. I really, you know, I want my buyer to trust that my search results are accurate and that I'm only pulling things that will work for them. But I'm not going to tell them, oh no, this doesn't work. I'm going to say, oh, I called the listing agent on this. You know, here's the deal. It's actually, you know, got an open citation with the city. That's why it's priced this way. This is what it can mean for you. I always explain things versus telling no, so I can train them out of that. I can train them into relying on my professional advice and my professional search for them instead. Anything else, guys? No? Okay, so if you are in the mentorship program, I want you to, after this class, right away, ask your mentor for a time and day they can meet with you, because between now and then, you are going to pull up the KW Command buyer consult package. You're going to edit the hell out of it. It's going to become 1/20th the size. And I want you to try to put together your own buyer consult package. And I want you to bring it to your mentor on that day and time and have them review it with you to make sure it's, you know, all inclusive, that you have all the questions you need on there. And then once you have that finalized with them, they've helped you get a final draft that you can actually use moving forward. I want you then to practice doing mock buyer consult with them. Okay, acting as the buyer's agent yourself and having them act as the buyer. Okay.
Gotcha.
And then you will have a buyer consult package that you can modify, make bigger or smaller moving forward. We good? Any more questions?
Yeah, I have a question, but like, you know, regarding this, I get an email from the CAR. They're saying mandatory sexual harassment prevention training deadline is approaching. So it
That
will
is
have to
for
do that.
staff members only.
Oh,
So like Alfredo has to do sexual harassment classes. We don't.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Because
Poor
I was like,
Alfredo.
okay, thank you.
All right, guys, if there's no other questions,
No, thank you for.
Thank
You're
you.
bye guys.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
You're welcome.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you.